This is a bonus episode for you guys. And I know it's not going to be for everyone right now. I know that when the Big Fat Negative came out with their pregnancy after infertility episode, I did not listen to it. I was like, I want to listen to that someday. And I had actually had the idea to do a pregnancy after infertility episode just because I had had a couple of friends who went through the anxiety and all of that, and I couldn't really understand it, but I thought someday I'll understand. And so I kind of filed it away in the back of my mind as something I wanted to do someday for when I got pregnant. So I'm happy that that day has come. And if you're not ready to listen to this episode, just, file it away. And, your time will come and you'll be able to listen to this episode and hopefully identify and find some type of support through it, knowing that it's normal. Like, all of those feelings are totally normal. So in this episode, we'll be talking about pregnancy freely, so there won't be any warnings or triggers or anything. Today I'm joined by Arden Cartrette. Is that how you say it?
Close. It's Cartrette. Yeah,
Cartrette. Like an ink cartridge. Wait, no, that's an ink cartridge.
Gosh, kind of. I've never heard.
Oh my God, I might cut that out because that made me sound like a total dumb blonde. Oh my Lord. Could I be any dumber?
I mean, I thought you were right. For a second, I didn't connect that it was cartridge.
Okay, moving along. This is Arden. She is, I met Arden through Instagram, as I do most of my friends these days. And she is just an amazing person who has shared her story from beginning, and I don't want to say to end because your story's not over, but you've been so open and honest. And when I was watching your story, just going through your story, I guess in some ways, it made me feel uncomfortable with myself because I wouldn't have been that transparent and open in the times that you were. But at the same time, it made me feel so good because someone was out there showing everything like it was. Because in the beginning, when Daniel and I first started trying, we didn't tell anyone, and we were so private and so, I guess, embarrassed and nervous about what people would think about us. And watching people like you be so open, it made me feel like, obviously not alone, but also like that's okay. Like, it's okay to be open about that stuff. And also it made me feel like I was not broken, that it happens to others. And I just think that you give courage to people. Like, I really do. I think that you...
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet.
Well,
That's so nice
I'm just saying what is true.
But even whenever I've shared those things, like, some of those times I was uncomfortable sharing it. But I'm just somebody, I've always been very outspoken, but I'm not really into the whole, sharing my whole life on social media, which is kind of funny now. But, on my personal social media, I didn't really... I didn't share every bit of my life. I rarely even updated. But whenever we started trying, I had that embarrassed feeling right away because I was afraid that somebody would see my search history on my computer or that I bought pregnancy tests or things like that. And I think whenever I started sharing on Instagram, it was a private account and I was anonymous. So, my name wasn't attached to it. Nobody I knew could have found it. So I felt like I was kind of a coward that I was open, but I wasn't, completely open. You know what I mean?
You're just getting your feet wet. I did the same thing. You have to become comfortable before you can, I guess, be the type of person that encourages other people, right?
No, totally. And it's weird to talk to yourself on an Instagram story.
Yeah.
That took me some time to get used to.
Yeah, it is weird.
I mean, opening up whenever I put my name on the account, it was, I think, whenever we got pregnant the first time. And that was after we came out, like, to our family that we were going through fertility struggles, and we were very open about that stuff kind of from that point on. So then I didn't care who really found out because our families and close friends knew. So.
Right. Mm-hmm.
People found out, they found out. I mean, I didn't advertise it, though.
Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about, like, yourself personally so we can get to know you first before we dive into all the other stuff. How did you and Carrie meet?
Oh, it's really romantic. We met on Facebook.
Ooh.
He got drunk I got drunk and I sent him a friend request and he accepted, and he was drunk and sent me a message. And then he gave me his number and we started talking. But I actually am friends with his cousin. So I was close friends with his cousin. So I knew who he was, but he was 3 years older than me and he wasn't really like on my radar at all. So we knew of each other, but we didn't know each other.
Nice. But then you got romantic. Drunk in two different places at the same time and the stars aligned. Like, that's just meant to be, basically.
It's a romantic love story. Whenever our children ask us one day, we're just going to say we met online.
And just keep it at that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they get older, you'll tell them the real story, I'm sure, right?
I'm sure that Facebook then will be like, Mom, what were you doing on Facebook?
Right.
That's so lame.
Facebook will be MySpace at that point.
Yeah. Right. Totally.
Oh my gosh. So when you guys got together, how long did you date before you got married?
We actually moved really fast. So from when we started dating, we actually talked about moving in together like only 2 months into dating. It was kind of crazy. And both of us were not really like that. It was, I was listening to your recent episode where you and Daniel kind of talk about from the beginning, you just knew that it was something different. And Carrie and I kind of say the same thing. Like, we both weren't looking for a relationship. I was actually just out of a really toxic relationship. And he was kind of like a partier. Like, he wasn't somebody that I would have ever been interested in. But, like, he would go out with his friends and get drunk every single weekend. And his priorities were kind of different than mine. But, whenever we met, it just kind of, we only wanted to be together. Yeah. And so we would do more things together, and I got along with his friends and things like that. So we just kind of, I don't know, it just felt right from the very beginning. So we talked very early about moving in together. We didn't move in together until 8 months in, which still is kind of early. And then we actually bought our house a year and a half into dating, I think. And so whenever we bought the house, that's when we started talking about marriage more, because I didn't want to move into a house that we were on a 30-year mortgage with without like a bigger commitment. So it was kind of me that initiated it, I guess. But then we got engaged and we got married 3 years after we started dating. Nice. Which is now 4 years ago.
Yeah. And then y'all did you know that you wanted to start trying right away, or did you say, oh, well, let's wait a bit?
Honestly, we talked very little about children. Like, we would say, like, one day if we have kids, but it would always be the if. Mm-hmm. And I actually came from not a great childhood. I don't really have a great relationship with either of my parents that's, like, super healthy or anything like that. So for me, I was kind of afraid to have kids to mess my kids up the way that my parents, I felt, messed me up. So I actually didn't know if I wanted to have kids for that reason. I thought I wouldn't be a good mother because I didn't think I had a good role model. But he has, like, the best family, like, very close and loving, and so he's always known that he wanted to have kids. So in the early days, we just continued to get dogs, and so now we have 4 dogs.
Just start collecting dogs. That would be like Daniel's dream.
That was just kind of our thing. Yeah, every time we would have baby fever, we would get a puppy, and then we would be like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. But now we have 4 dogs, but they were kind of like our babies for a while. Plus, like, we knew that we had to be in a good financial place to even talk about having kids. So it wasn't until I have the job that I have now. I got it 3 years ago now. And that's when we started talking and really jumped into trying but not preventing. Yeah. Or not trying but not preventing. But
so you said Carrie was kind of like had a suspicion that he would have trouble
Yeah,
reproducing. When did you start to feel that way?
I can remember the exact moment because it's like a breakthrough in our journey that I had. It was around the 10-month mark, and I was like, something is wrong. This isn't working. I could not imagine making it to that 12-month mark and then seeing a reproductive endocrinologist and having infertility on my medical documents. It was just something that really, it made me feel really broken. It made me feel like I felt like I had a deadline. Like I felt like I had to get pregnant by that 12th month mark, or I was going to be infertile, and I didn't want to be infertile. Until that point, I mean, I was disappointed it wasn't happening, and from the first month, I would cry over every single negative test or when my period started. But I didn't really let Carrie know how disappointed I was until the 10th month. So that was kind of my breaking point. And he had no idea, how invested I was in this. Or, he didn't know that every time my period started at work, I would sit in the bathroom and cry until I filled him in on all of that. So I'd say around that 10th mark, that was kind of okay, this isn't happening. I want to know why. I want to get help. That was just kind of my breaking point, I guess.
Yeah, because as a woman, it's happening to your body. It's from day to day, you're monitoring your cycle, your period, your ovulation, and it's like a trip. You literally are taken down this trip from one period to the next, and you take it so personally because it's every single day you're thinking about it, whereas the guy is so far removed and he's just waiting for it to be a yes. He's not it's not happening to him. So it's funny how differently they see it sometimes.
Well, after I kind of let him in on how I was feeling, that's when we made our pact to where I would not take a pregnancy test by myself. So he wanted me to always take it with him in the room. That way I didn't have to go through it by myself, which was really nice of him to even bring up or say, because, I mean, I would get up at 5 a.m. on 8 days past ovulation, okay, I could take a test. And so now he wanted to be a part of it. And I think the next month we had another, we realized that we were getting closer to having to see a specialist. And I remember that was the first time that he really cried over the disappointment. And it was just really hard for us to go through as a couple, realizing that something we wanted wasn't happening for us.
Right.
But I don't know why he thought something was wrong with him. He didn't bring it up much after we started trying. It was always before we started, and it was before we got married.
Wow.
So that was really the more he worried about it for some reason.
Interesting. So when you started trying and nothing was happening, when did you start the Hello Warrior blog?
So I started Hello Warrior, but it was under a different name before because it was kind of my outlet just to vent about everything. And it was kind of more negative than I wanted to be, so I've deleted everything. But it was only 5 months in did I start blogging, and I had the anonymous account on Instagram. So I actually was looking for an outlet a lot earlier than I told Carrie that I was getting kind of anxious it wasn't happening. 5 months in is when I joined my first online support group, and then I started the blog under a different name, and I would just kind of, at that point, I would only blog about my journey. I would write down it was more for me to chronicle my ovulation symptoms and things like that. But after my first miscarriage is when I actually rebranded to Hello Warrior. And instead of being a place for me to talk about my journey and vent about my frustrations, I kind of wanted to create a resource for other people to where they could come to me if they want to share their story, and I can help them do it on Hello Warrior. So now that is obviously Hello Warrior, and my reason for the whole rebrand and the name was just because, in the community we call ourselves infertility warriors and miscarriage warriors, and I just wanted it to be a place for everybody. So I share other women's journeys now. I still share mine. I'll share tips or things that I learned. So it's just kind of like something for everything. And I wanted it to be able to grow with me as hopefully my journey grew.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of what, and it's funny because, back to listening to your last podcast episode with Daniel, where you mentioned that this has become such a passion for you. It's like, especially after my first miscarriage, like when I went through that, I realized that like maybe this is all happening to me for some reason. Maybe I'm supposed to talk about this. Maybe I'm supposed to help somebody else through it. And it just kind of made me feel like I had a purpose.
Right.
And so that's why I just continued to grow the blog and continue to share, because I knew that even if it helped one person, that was worth it to me.
And I've always found it so inspirational, like when people lose a child, or, you know, when people's child get hit by a drunk driver or something and they become like an advocate. I think that you can't let something tragic happen to you and just let it be part of your story. You know, like I think you have to, I mean, I don't want to say you have to, because some people are not comfortable with it, but if you are comfortable with it, I think you owe it to the world to just say, look, I'm here. This happened to me. If you want to talk about it, like that's basically basics. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I've been through it too. You're not alone. If you want to talk about it, I'm here.
Yeah.
And so whatever we can do as, I don't want to say survivors of it, but people who have been through that kind of trauma, it's like, why not? Why not use it for good?
No, totally. Carrie and I kind of joke because he tells me that I'm kind of like a miscarriage coach. Is the term he uses. Because especially after my first miscarriage, like my first one, I knew that it was happening, but it happened unexpectedly at home before my D&C. So I was very unprepared. I did not know what to expect because nobody would tell me. And after that, I was like, I never want another woman to go through what I went through that night. So whenever I would see somebody in the community say, you know, I got the news today that my baby stopped growing at 8 weeks and I have to decide what my options are, I would reach out to them privately and say, if you go through this naturally, here's my number, let's talk, like I'll walk you through everything and, you know, help you feel kind of more prepared. Like I would tell them what to buy, and I would tell them, I'd prepare them for what things would look like, because I didn't expect it when it happened to me, and it was, I mean, it's really traumatizing.
Yeah.
And so I would just kind of be available for people to talk it through as it was happening. So even though we joke that I'm kind of a miscarriage coach, like I don't, you know, I do that because I want to help other people. I don't want people to go through what I went through.
Right, because you're right. Nobody tells you about the gruesome details, and
nobody is honest. And it really, that was like the most frustrating thing to me during my first miscarriage. Even my second miscarriage, the second time I took the misoprostol, I'm probably butchering the name, and nobody told me that like 40% of people hemorrhage days after taking it.
Right.
And so after I shared that happened to me and I ended up in the hospital, people were like, I didn't want to scare you. I didn't want to tell you that happened to me as well. And I was like, scare me. I'm already scared.
Right. It would have been nice to just have all the facts. Like, potentially, you know, be prepared. And I totally get that. And I loved the guest blog that you did on the Infertility website.
Oh, yeah.
About kind of the miscarriage, what is it, Kitt?
And it's just like I would bring around this kit with me.
all the things that you'll need. When I was going through my first miscarriage, I remember going into CVS, and I can't remember if Daniel was with me or not, but I just remember having to buy those overnight pads, and I felt, well, first I felt really dirty, like, ew, I've got to wear these, and then when I was checking out, I felt like these are for me to miscarry my baby. Like, the person ringing me up has no idea that these are for me miscarrying my baby. Like, they have no idea. And I just, it was just horrible. Like, it was horrible. I had no idea what it would be like. I just, you know, my doctor told me to go get some of those thick, heavy overnight pads and don't wear tampons. But I just had no idea what it would be like. No idea.
No, at all. Like, I I think I wrote on like my online support group at the time, and I was like, ladies who have had a miscarriage, what was it like? And just everybody said a heavy period, and I don't know if they didn't want to tell me the truth or if they were just trying to put it nicely, but I mean, both of mine were not heavy periods because I have heavy periods. I have terrible periods, and that was like 3 or 4 times the pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, I think that everybody's afraid to talk about like the blood and like the gory details. Like I wrote another guest blog post for, I think it was Fertility Smarts, and I wrote about my first miscarriage in detail, and I said, is this going to be too gory for your website? And they were like, no, we want somebody to tell these details. I was like, good. Like, I just kind of, like, I offer it up because, I mean, as women, we should be aware of what a miscarriage looks like, no matter if it's at 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 10 weeks,
Right. Yeah.
Like, our baby did not have a heartbeat, but what I lost was like, I mean, it's the same, like it's the same size and the same, process. So just nobody wants to prepare you for it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's so great. Tell people where they can find your blog.
My blog is hello-warrior. I don't think a dash is a correct word. hello-warrior.com, and my Instagram is Arden M, as in Mary, Cartrette.
Cartrette.
Hopefully the spelling is in the notes.
Not cartridge. Not cartridge, because that will be someone else, maybe.
Yeah.
I wonder if there is an Arden Cartridge out there.
That poor girl.
Yes, I will put the links to her blog and to her Instagram and all of that in the Podbean notes so that you can go. And I think it'll show up on Apple's podcast as well. Yeah. So what we wanted to talk about today really was we just wanted to talk about what it's like being pregnant after having experienced miscarriage and infertility for long periods of time. I know Arden and my story is really different. However, we both have experienced recurrent miscarriage. It took me a little bit longer to get to where I'm at. I didn't have an easy time getting pregnant. Like, I would say, Arden, through your medicated cycles, it seemed like every medicated cycle worked for you. It was just a matter of keeping that pregnancy. What did that feel like, I guess, feeling like they were working every single time and then having the miscarriage?
Well, with the medicated cycles working, I felt like I was the most infertile woman, like, ever. And it was really frustrating because that actually, although it's great that it works for me, it also made me feel more broken because it's like, if this works so easily with a pill, I don't understand why it's not happening on its own.
Right.
But one of our 3 pregnancies was natural, but I, to this day, cannot figure out how the hell it happened. Like, I think about it often, and I have absolutely no idea how it happened. And with the medicated cycles, it's hard to accept that we needed medicine, but I also remind myself that, like, that doesn't work for a lot of people, and I consider myself extremely blessed in that case. It almost makes me feel guilty, to be honest. Like, it makes me feel like there's somebody out there that deserves it more than me, and I kind of took their chance, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but you can't feel that way. I know it's natural to feel that way. I feel that way too. Like, after everything we've been through, and then we got pregnant naturally, like, to me, it doesn't feel right because there are people that have been going through this longer than we have and have had more rounds of IVF than we have had. And I feel guilty that it somehow happened for us and not for other people. But then you have to look at it like, no, I've been through hell And everyone deserves to, well, I don't want to say everyone deserves to be parents because I encounter a lot of people on a daily basis who shouldn't have kids, but I would say that everybody in our community deserves to
For sure.
eventually get their dreams. But I totally can identify with you feeling guilty about that.
Yeah. Well, can I ask you, even though I'm the guest on your podcast, like, do you ever feel angry that you went through it was almost 10 years of trying, right? For you guys, you went through that. You went through numerous IVF cycles and transfers and miscarriages to have surgery. And then for it to happen at this point, like, do you feel angry that could have been the answer 5 years ago, but it never came up? Like, do you ever feel, you know what I mean?
Yes, I feel pissed. And Daniel and I both, we try not to have that conversation. We've had the conversation, of course. But it makes us angry because we are in debt and living in this townhouse, which is fine. Like, that's how life is sometimes. When you don't know, you don't know. But I will say that at one point we did know that it was endometriosis and we were asking for help. And my RE was like not interested in exploring that because he is our former RE. Let me just put it that way.
Right.
In his mind, endometriosis doesn't cause infertility. And we were just like, that is a low, I mean, I'm no doctor, but I know for a fact that that's not the truth. And so, yeah, it makes us really angry. And then to hear, Dr. Braverman told us if this had been addressed years ago, we would have 4 kids and we'd be living in the countryside. Yeah. So naturally. So, I mean, yeah, it really pisses me off that we went through all of that and spent all of that money for nothing. But then at the same time, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I wouldn't be talking to you. And I wouldn't have connected with all of the amazing people that I've connected with in our community. So, yes, it makes me mad. But I think growing hurts. Anytime you grow through something, it's painful. And so you just have to look at it for what it is in the big picture, and then you just somehow move on.
Well, and you also have to think about, like, I think I struggled with this thought, I think it was last week, because I thought about, I felt guilty that I felt happy to be pregnant with this baby because I lost 2 babies.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like being happy about this baby means that, like, I've forgotten about those.
Yeah.
And I didn't, but you can't say, like, I would rather have one of those living than this one. It just makes no sense in your head. Like, you can't make sense of it at all.
100%.
Because if you didn't go through that stuff, you wouldn't have that little girl in your stomach.
Right.
And I've always told myself, I think this has been, like, the thing that has kept me grounded, like, through fertility, everything. I always, like, imagined this one moment, like, whenever our child is born and in our arms, where it just makes sense. Like, in that moment, we understand why it took so long, or why we had to go through those miscarriages, and we just feel grateful,
Yeah.
So I think about that often, but, like, it makes me feel confused to feel, I don't know, like, you still mourn the other lives that could have been, but, like, you couldn't have done anything to make them be what this one is.
And I think that's the thing about comparison, and that whole, saying that comparison is the thief of joy, because when you compare one pregnancy to the next, it's like, when every time we see our daughter on that screen and I see her moving and I feel her moving, I'm in awe of her life, and I sit there and I'm speechless about how strong she is to have gotten here, and she's made it further than anyone, and she's basically defied the odds. I mean, we got pregnant right after my surgery, naturally. Like, she wanted to be here. And I can't say, well, why didn't the other ones want to be here? Like, why?
Right.
Because it was, the circumstances were different. I had disease in my body that was not allowing them to live.
Yeah.
And you have to look at every pregnancy separately and say, this is a miracle. Those were miracles. Like, all of the embryos that we lost, they were all miracles too. I mean, the
Mhm.
fact that I had endometriosis all over my ovaries and I was still able to make healthy eggs, I think was a miracle. So,
Yeah.
they were miracles too. They just weren't meant to be here.
Yeah.
They weren't, and it's probably good because this world is crap sometimes. I mean,
This world is crap.
gosh, it scares me, like sending my
Terrifying.
daughter to school and like, will she be safe? And, it's just like they're probably better off just going straight to heaven, than
Yeah.
having to have experienced this world.
Totally.
But I mean, so in that, when I look at it that way, I am kind of thankful that they're safe. They're safer
Yeah.
somewhere else, in heaven, and not here. But
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, I guess moving on to the anxiety part of pregnancy, it's there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that pregnancy in the early days,
So much
thinking,
anxiety.
well, any minute
Mhm.
the shoe's gonna drop, and any second, every time I went to the bathroom, I would check my panties. Like, I would
Yeah.
be like, is there blood? I was just
Mhm.
like expecting there to be, I was just expecting it to be the worst case scenario every
Right.
time. Did you
Did you
feel
have
that
any
way?
spotting with this pregnancy?
I did. So I probably had spotting at 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and 11 weeks, but it was
Oh.
really, really light. It wasn't ever on the panty liner. It was always just on the tissue,
Mhm.
but which still scared the crap out of me.
Totally.
But one happened, I think the 6 week, that happened right after a scan. And so I
Mhm.
called the doctor and she's like, yeah, that can happen with, transvaginal ultrasounds that can cause bleeding sometimes. Don't worry. I went in anyways for like another little scan, and everything was fine. But so, yeah, I did. I had a few instances, and of course, each time it freaked me out.
Mhm.
But have you had any spotting with this pregnancy?
I had spotting at 6 weeks and 7 weeks, or in between 6 and 7 weeks. But it started really light and it would get like heavier. And there was one day where I was like, I'm miscarrying. Like, I
Oh
told Carrie I wanted him
no.
to take me to the hospital. Um, but he like, I showed him the amount of blood that was in my underwear, and he was like, it's really not a lot. Like, it's
Yeah.
still considered spotting. And he was kind of talking me off a ledge because to me it was like blood everywhere.
Feels like
And
a lot when
well,
it's
and
happening to you.
no, and totally. And one of my biggest triggers is blood. Like, my periods, especially after miscarriage, are extremely triggering for me. To where like my bosses understand that, and so I'm usually at home the first couple of days of my period because like I'm just an emotional wreck.
Mhm.
And so seeing blood was really hard for me in general. But we had our first scan at 7 weeks, so I had to wait like a week for our first scan. I still called my doctor and said, I'm spotting, and they told me what to look out for, if it got, if it had clots or if it was more than filling a panty liner, then that's normally not normal.
Right.
At the first scan, they saw that I probably butchering the name, the subchronic hematoma.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Mhm.
So I did have that, so that at least we had a reason for the bleeding, which actually made me feel better. And we saw the heartbeat for the first time. So
Oh.
I did have spotting, and that caused me the most anxiety I think I've had this entire pregnancy.
Yeah.
It's just so terrible.
I know.
And then you constantly are waiting for it to happen again because now you know what it looks like in this pregnancy for you to spot, so you're on the lookout all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, I wore panty liners every single day just because I thought, what if I start to miscarry, or what if I start to spot, or, and it's such, I wish we could just enjoy our
Totally.
being pregnant, but it wasn't that at all. I was terrified when we went into our first scan. I was excited, but having that memory of going in for a scan and seeing nothing there, like I had a gestational sac, but there was nothing in there. And I
Right.
was like meant to be nearly 12 weeks along at that time. This was when we had our ectopic. And
Yeah.
I just remember being so confused at that time, thinking, what? Like, there's nothing in there? Are you sure you can't find it? But
Yeah.
I was so scared when we went for our first scan with this pregnancy, because I just thought, I don't want to look at the screen. Like,
Mhm.
I just kind of like, I didn't look at the screen right away. And then I kind of like glanced over, and I just thought, please let there be something in there. Just let there be something in there, you know?
Yeah.
And then,
I had all of that anxiety the first scan. It's terrible.
yeah, yeah. And then with each scan, it's like, please let it have grown.
Mhm.
Please let it have grown.
Yeah.
Um, please let there be a heartbeat. And my mom would ask me, did you cry when you first saw the baby? And I was like, no, I was relieved. It wasn't even like oh,
Yeah.
oh, it's so beautiful. Like that type of moment that other
Uh
people
huh.
get to experience. It was like, whew, every single time it was like, okay, it's grown. Okay, the heart is still beating.
Yeah. That's
And
exactly how I felt.
yeah, and it's so weird. I never, even after all of this time, I never thought that it would be like this.
Mm-mm.
Never.
I totally agree. I had the most. I've cried once at a scan, and it was at 11 weeks. Because in between 10 and 11 weeks, for some reason, my anxiety was just sky high. I mean, I've met so many people in this community that lost babies at 10
Yeah.
weeks, and that's just in my head. And I had weekly scans until 12 weeks. So in between the 10th week scan and the 11-week scan, for some reason I was just a mess. And going in for that 11-week scan, I had convinced myself that something was wrong. Like, I just couldn't imagine that I would not have a 10-week loss when all these other people, did. And so seeing the heart flickering on the screen for that scan, I started crying, but it was still out of relief. Like,
Right.
it wasn't because it was so beautiful I was going to die.
Yeah.
I was just so happy that I was wrong in my head.
It's so interesting that you bring up the fact that you remember people having miscarriages at that particular week, because I felt that every single scan. Oh, I remember she miscarried at 6 weeks, or oh, I
Yeah.
remember they miscarried at 8 weeks, and then 10 weeks, and then, I have a friend who had a 23-week loss, and so by the time I made it all the way to 23 weeks, I was like, well, that still doesn't mean that we're out of the woods,
Right.
something bad could still happen. And now I'm 26 weeks, nearly 27 weeks, and I I think that after the 12-week, 14-week mark, I started feeling really comfortable in the pregnancy, and started to allow myself to enjoy, journal more and take more pics, and, video more and things like that. But in those early days, I was just like, this is just more ammo that I'm going
Yeah.
to have to delete if I miscarry.
Yeah, I thought about it like that too. I would say week 12 was really a turning point for me in the way that I felt. Mainly, something that helps my anxiety is I use a home Doppler. So I found the
Yeah.
heartbeat right before 12 weeks. And for me, that was just a very big milestone that I could hear the heartbeat at home. So now I listen to the heartbeat every day, and that really helps me, even though I know a lot of people don't think that's great.
Yeah.
But but my doctor said I could do it 2 or 3 times a day, and she's totally fine with it. And that for me is something that really helps my anxiety. But as I've hit 13 weeks, now tomorrow I'm 14 weeks, so I'm in like a whole nother trimester. It's just so crazy that I made it that far.
Yeah.
And I think I'm starting to relax a little bit more. Like, I've started researching strollers and cribs and things like that, which is kind of overwhelming, but I wasn't doing that before. Like, I wouldn't look up a single pregnancy related item because I didn't want my Google to have it in like my ads and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, but like what you said about how it'd be more ammo, I think I felt like that with our second pregnancy, and I didn't take a single photo. I didn't write down like a single way I was feeling, and it's one of my biggest regrets because I did it with my first pregnancy, and like I have nothing to remember the second one by because I threw out all of my pregnancy tests. I just kind of trashed everything. And this time I told Carrie, I said, even if we buy things, even if we lose the baby at 20 weeks, at 30 weeks, or, if we don't get to bring the baby home, like, it's going to hurt all the same no matter what we have to remember it by. So 100%. We kind of go by that.
Yeah, exactly. And about the Dopplers, we got a Doppler at 10 weeks, and I wanted one sooner than that, but I had read all the stuff like don't get one because you'll mistake your heartbeat for the baby's heartbeat, and then you'll feel safe, and then it's not really safe, and then blah blah blah. But at that 10-week mark, I was like, screw it. I have to be able to do something. And so we started listening to the baby's heartbeat every single night before bed, and it just made us feel, and I encourage anyone,
I agree.
just make sure you know the difference between your heartbeat and the baby's heartbeat. And then you'll be fine once you find it.
Right.
And my placenta is actually in the back, so my doctor said that we would probably be able to find her heartbeat easier. So my doctor was okay with it. And it really did help us. And I would encourage anyone who has experienced infertility, just know how to use it. That's the only real thing I would have to say is, make sure you're using it properly. And then, it will help. It will help that anxiety in those early days.
I agree. Yeah. I can see how it causes people anxiety because some people can't use it because it causes them anxiety. But for me, it just eases it. I had one moment where I couldn't find the heartbeat. I think it was like last week. I'm not sure. It was before bed, and I couldn't find the heartbeat. But it's kind of like I just said to myself that I need to trust that this baby is strong enough. And, excuse me, almost had a burp. I have to trust this baby is strong enough, and it's made it this far. Plus, I was like 12 or 13 weeks at the time. There's so many places for them to hide that it's so easy not to find it. So I just kind of told myself that I just need to trust that this time is different. I went to bed, slept fine, I woke up, I tried again, and I found it. So I think it's really about like your mental state too.
Yeah.
Like, don't do it if it's going to make it worse.
Exactly. And you have to know that. And I think the thing about being on Instagram, in those early days, of course, no one knew for a really long time that I was pregnant. I think I told you.
You did.
And I told a couple other people that I had gotten really close to, just because I didn't want them to find out through an announcement. And you were, at the time, probably going through, I think, your second miscarriage, or you had gone through your miscarriage not that long before or after.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so, and I just kind of wanted to tell you because you establish these relationships with people, and they are real relationships. And so, just like a friend in real life, you wouldn't want them to be blindsided by finding out on Facebook. And so I had told, a handful of people through private message. Also, the reason I did that was because I needed support. I mean, I was struggling. I was really struggling with anxiety and not being able to sleep. I was worried. I mean, the fear, the panic, a lot of my early pregnancy symptoms like nausea and all of that kind of stuff was really overshadowed by anxiety. And it's funny because a lot of people, like my mom asked me if I was really sick in the beginning because I get car sick and I'm like a nauseous prone person. And I think maybe that particular fact helped me cope with the nausea better. But I never like puked or anything. There were bad days, but obviously, I mean, not obviously, but honestly, I think that all of those things in the first trimester were really overshadowed by that anxiety. And so it was hard to be like, oh, I feel so sick, when really I was like, oh my God, I'm so worried. Like that was my ailment of choice, was the anxiety. Did you feel that way?
No, I did. And I honestly wonder if I had any symptoms that I just didn't realize I had symptoms of things. Plus, I was on progesterone, so I kind of already felt like a zombie just from the added progesterone. But I had so much anxiety, and I wouldn't speak it out loud because I was so afraid that if I voiced the anxiety, it would like make it happen, even though I don't even know if I believe that that is how things happen.
Yeah.
But like I thought that I would just manifest a miscarriage, if that even makes any sense.
Yeah, totally.
So I definitely agree that I honestly don't know what symptoms I had in the early days because I wasn't focusing on it.
Right.
As crazy as it sounds. But I definitely, like, I'm somebody who I don't feel really good in the car, especially if I'm not driving. Right. So I didn't feel good in the car pregnant, but that wasn't abnormal for me. Or I think I was just, like, extra hungry. I think that might have been tired.
Yeah.
Like, that was really the only thing that was maybe stronger than my anxiety.
Yeah. Well, I was on a steroid, so I definitely was hungry and tired. But I think that was my initial, like pretty much my only complaint in the first trimester, was that I was eating like anything that was not someone else's or pinned down or anything that I could get my hands on. It was just food all the time. Yeah. It was ridiculous. And I certainly have memories of feeling nauseous, and I really like those memories because it makes me feel like it was normal in some sense, and that I did experience those early pregnancy symptoms. But for the most part, it was just, I would, crawl up next to Daniel and just be like, I'm so scared. And then he would just, he was really good at being like, this is different. Like, this is our baby. Like, this is, and even if it was just for a second, I would believe him. And that was
so crazy how we believe. Like, Carrie does the same thing where he's like, everything is fine. And for a second, I'm like, you're right, everything is fine. But it's like, what does he know?
Yeah, he does.
That I'm believing him.
That's what I told Daniel is like that type of person where the house could be on fire and he'd be like, everything's okay. Like, it's fine. We're alive. Like, and I would just be like, no, it's not fine. But he has a way of really minimizing, I guess, things, which is annoying to me, but also is quite a gift sometimes, especially when I was feeling so scared and anxious about things. I think I needed that. And like I said, it was just, even if it was for a second, I would believe him. So yeah, that was good. That was good to have him there.
Carrie, he kind of worries more now than I think he used to, for sure. Like, because of our losses, if I get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, he's like alert, and he's like, are you okay?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm fine. I'm just going to the bathroom. And I don't know if people who never experience infertility or loss, if their nights look like that, but Carrie never used to be like that. Like, he would sleep through me getting out of the bed or anything like that. But, like, with our first miscarriage, it happened in the middle of the night where I got up thinking I needed to use the bathroom, and that's when I realized it was happening. And so I think that, like, even though it's indirect PTSD from it, he kind of has that mentality, like, what if something is wrong and I'm not there?
Right. So he does worry. He just tries not to show you because
Totally.
he knows you're doing enough worrying by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wants to be the man.
Exactly. And I have asked Daniel that, like, did you really have anxiety, or were you really scared in our first trimester, or were you just pretending to be strong? And he says that he doesn't. Like, he says that he really believed that this was it for us. And
Wow, what
so
is that like?
I don't know.
I know, like, Carrie was so positive, and he was like, let's not think about the past. This is different. And at our first scan, whenever we saw the flicker and the doctor walked out of the room, like, his eyes were filled with tears. Like, it's almost like he didn't want to tell me how scared he was, but now he was so relieved that he was right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that was, I mean, other than that, like, he just acts super strong. And I don't know if he's acting or if he is. Like, he never lets me know if he's just putting on a face for us both. But it's almost nice to know that somebody is at least having it together.
Right.
That you don't have to have it together right now.
Right. And that's what makes a great relationship, is when they can
If we were
balance
both
you out.
falling apart at the
know.
same time, I don't know if I could handle it.
I know. It would be intense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm so thankful. I've always been thankful for Daniel, but I think, having gone through infertility for so long, he kept my life interesting and made me feel like I had more to my life. And that's what's great. I'm so thankful for that. And then in the early stages, obviously thankful for feeling like, this was it.
Right.
This is our baby. This is our little rainbow, and she's coming,
Yeah.
It was so hard to get into that mentality of, oh, she's growing, I'm pregnant, and then to switch to, crap, we've got to get a car seat. She's actually coming, and there's like a due date, and there's, it's weird because I feel like, we're nearly 27 weeks now, and I'm sitting in what will be her nursery, and I'm looking at the boxes. Her dresser's in a box, her crib is in a box. And so we're going to get that stuff put together soon, but it's like, they say that after 24 weeks, you should have all the stuff, because what if they come early? And I'm like, well, I don't want her to come early, but crap, what if she does come early?
Yeah.
But it's hard to shift into that. No, we can't put the crib together because that's just one more thing we'll have to take apart just in case something bad happens, or, we can't get this, that, or the other. It's hard. It's hard to switch gears, but I think I'm there. I know you said after the 14-week mark, you started to feel more comfortable. Do you feel like you're there yet?
I feel more comfortable. I haven't bought, like, a single piece of clothing or anything. So Carrie and I, to celebrate going into the second trimester, we're going to go and buy, like, an outfit or something. We're going to do gender neutral because we don't know the sex yet, just to kind of make it feel more real. But
yeah,
I don't know if I'm comfortable buying things. Like, even though I am starting to believe that it will happen, I'm so uncomfortable with having baby stuff in the house. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it is.
But I feel like
strange.
after 24 weeks, and I wonder if you felt like that because of the whole viability thing and how they can live on the outside. Did that make you feel better?
I felt, I would say at the 24-week mark, it was like, yay, viability. But then it's not really, because it's like she has a 50% chance now of living outside, which is a 50% chance. But I do think once you get over that hump, it's better. Like every single week, like at 26 weeks, it's a 70% chance. At 27 or 28 weeks, it's like a 90% chance they could live. So I think you start doing that whole Dr. Google thing, and you start Googling, and it's just every single week feels more like you've made it another step. And so every bump pick means more. every single week means more. And I started saying that, a while back when I got pregnant. I said, I'm not doing anything to that guest room. And in fact, we found out we were pregnant the day before we moved into this townhome. And Daniel was like, well, shouldn't we go ahead and just not move the bed and we had like a desk and a bed. It was a whole guest room. And he's like, shouldn't we just put all this in storage instead of moving it in and setting it up when we're just going to have to, in a couple of months, take it all out? And I was like, no, because what if something bad happens and then we just have an empty room and we have to address it, and then we're going to have to go to storage and move the bed in, and to me, I just was like, no, we'll just see how it goes, and that was another kind of, you do things to safeguard and protect yourself at all costs, with infertility. And that's including, not going on Instagram and stuff like that. And it's just, a mind game, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I kept telling myself I wouldn't get anything ready until 30 weeks. And now I'm starting to feel that excitement at 14 weeks. Well, now I want to buy stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also afraid to do it. It's a total mind game, and it makes no sense. I have some onesies that I bought the first time we were pregnant to tell Carrie that we were pregnant. They're very, manly, because at, Walmart, there's no, all pink or blue, and it was really frustrating to find something to give him. But both of our favorite colors are blue, so that's why I got it. But, we've put them on our dogs. I don't know if the baby gets those. Because I have small dogs, and they all look so cute in baby onesies.
Aw, you just cut a little hole for the tail.
Yeah,
You've got a little outfit. Oh, that's so sweet. Well,
yeah,
I hope that
we start getting more excited, and I don't know. I think now that I'm showing, especially, and once I tell the agents in the office, I'll be able to be super open about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're wondering why I'm eating 3 things of Easy Mac for lunch and using the bathroom every 5 seconds.
I know. I was eating probably every 3 hours. I would have 2 lunches. I would have snacks and then fruit and then just a bunch of food. And yeah,
I was doing that for a while, and now I'm in the habit of getting a pre-dinner burger. And it's a really unhealthy habit to be in.
I saw your free hamburger the other day. That was
on Instagram. Yeah. It was honestly delicious, and I have not stopped thinking about it. But Carrie told me that I had 3 burgers last week. All of them were from McDonald's, which I do not eat fast food. I think fast food is so terrible, and I can't eat it. Chick-fil-A, I think it's fine. I think it's better quality. But McDonald's and Burger King and things like that, I don't normally eat.
Yeah.
But I have been loving McDonald's.
Wow.
It's terrible.
Maybe the baby wants it. The baby just wants it. I don't know what to say. I don't eat hamburgers. I haven't eaten a hamburger probably in over 10 years, but
Oh, really?
I smell them when Daniel gets them, and I'm like, man, if there was ever going to be a time where I would eat a hamburger ever again, it would be now.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even a burger person. I don't get burgers often.
Yeah.
I don't really like to eat hunks of meat. It's just not my thing. It's just kind of gross to me. But for some reason, it's delicious right now. That and Easy Mac. Specific brand Easy Mac. That's all I want.
Yeah.
It's really bad. It's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, that's pregnancy for you. Mm-hmm. I'm at the point in pregnancy where I can't really eat much because of the reflux, but it doesn't mean I don't want the food. I mean, I want the food.
I've gained a little weight already.
Yeah.
Food, but I didn't weigh myself between the second pregnancy and this pregnancy, so I honestly don't know what is grief weight, because I kind of punished my body with food for a while.
I did the same thing. I did the same thing. I would just be like,
that's what I did.
Well, it doesn't matter what I eat. Mm-hmm. And I would kind of self-sabotage, and I would punish myself, punish my body for being a total piece of crap. And just be like, well, it doesn't matter what I eat.
I did the same thing, and then I realized I was punishing myself because I was gaining weight.
Oops.
No, now it's just extra skin to stretch out, I
there
guess.
you go. See, you were doing the pre-work, so you were already stretching your skin. There you go. And now you won't have as many stretch marks.
Oh, I hope not. My boobs have grown more than my stomach has.
Oh my God, my boobs are like huge. Huge.
Like, even to get totally TMI, because that's just what this is, Carrie said to me the other day and made me cry. He's like, oh, your nipples have gotten a little bit bigger. I was like, are you kidding me? Did you just said that out loud?
Yeah, they're huge.
He was like, I mean it as a good thing. And I was like, I'm not taking it as a good thing. So he made me cry, but he felt really bad.
Yeah, the nips get pretty big. And yeah, everything else. Well, Arden, I've taken so much of your time already. I know.
I feel bad. I feel bad that I took so much of your time.
No, don't feel bad. But thank you so much for joining me today. It means a lot that you are so open and honest, and I really appreciate you being a guest for this particular episode. In particular, it's really special to have you here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for asking me. It was fun to talk to you outside of Instagram.
I know. It was fun. We should do it more often.
Yeah.